Hello. Hi, everyone. How's your afternoon? Well, I'm happy to be here. As you all know, my name is Towett Ngetich. I am with Founders Factory. If you do not know what Founders Factory does, we invest in early stage startups in equity. So happy to have a chat about that. But today we're here on a different case, and that is basically the world's and maybe Africa's biggest risk, which is climate. And as you may all know, we've been facing different sorts of climate challenges, all the way from floods that are causing, different aspects of risks amongst us, to heavy or high temperatures altogether. And the people here on stage with me are doing different type of things in their market to support or alleviate the effects of climate change. And just for statistics, transportation contributes to 40% of CO2 emissions in the African continent. So I'm happy to introduce the gents beside me, starting with Joe. I call him Joe because I know him from way back, but yeah, he can take it around and then we can pass it back and we can start on a discussion about e-mobility.
No, thanks so much, and hope you guys are still awake. It's been a long day, but we'll hopefully talk about this electric revolution that's happening here in Nairobi as e-mobility really becomes the future of transportation. Not just, we're talking about e-mobility across the entire spectrum. We're not just talking about motorbikes, from e-bikes all the way through to buses. Nairobi really is leading this electric revolution that's taking off. And it's not just something that's being talked about, it's happening at scale. And next year, I think we're going to see tens of thousands of EVs on the road across Kenya, and addressing this climate change issue, as you said. It's 40% of CO2 emissions related to transportation. I think you're going to see particular wins in the first and last mile space, particularly as collaborations like the one the three of us have, which we'll talk about later. So I'm just really pleased to be part of that. As I said, I'm Joe from Arc Ride. We do battery swapping for 2- and 3-wheel vehicles, so bodas and tuk-tuks. And I'll hand over there and we can continue the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good evening. My name is Johannes, representing financiers on this panel from Mogo, Kenya. To support what Joseph just said, looking at the state of the economy and where the world is heading, electric mobility, both cars, motorbikes, they will be the most sustainable and most affordable ways of transport in the future. And the financing for those is already and will be moving on, the most affordable for most people across the world. So passing it up to you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jacob Ochieng. I'm representing Little. Little already currently run about over 100,000 cab hailing in the country, and we have about over 5,000 motorbike running in the country, and we'll also be looking into transitioning from the normal motorbikes, transitioning into the EV sector, into this market. Not just this market, but across the region as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. So just to draw your context and give you more clarity, we have a whole value chain here where we have the people providing the motorbikes and the vehicles, we have the financing aspect, and we have the people creating opportunities for the border riders or the drivers at the very end. So if you think of it, you could walk up here, speak to Johannes to give you financing, come to Joe, who will then give you a bike, and go to Jacob, who will then employ you. And the cycle goes on and on and on. And that is what e-mobility is. But I'd like to start our discussion with technology. And I'd just like to hear from your side, Joe, about, you've been in the business of e-mobility. This has been a long conversation. We've seen Rwanda bring in some regulations and policies that shapes the space. We have seen South Africa bring up some of the bills into place. Kenya is talking about having 5% of all vehicles being shipped into the country by 2025 to be EVs. So from your context, and having been in this space for a while, what is it that really made that push for this part of the continent to be awake, not just in terms of policies, but also what are the innovations that you guys had underlying that supported this conversation moving forward?
Yeah, so I think the innovation space is really critical. And in terms of e-mobility, that's happened. You know, big debate. Are people going to be charging at home? Is it going to be battery swapping? And that's been sort of played out over the last couple of years. And I think now you're getting very distinct players in the market. Those like us that are committed to battery swapping and putting 100 swapping stations around Nairobi. So every 3 kilometers you're there. But it's also a data business. The IoT cards that are connected that are enabling those swaps to happen. We've iterated. We're like on the 4th version of our product. But I think it's probably more important to talk about the sector and the regulatory change that's come in. And that's not been driven by Arkwright. What you've seen is a collaboration of companies come together to form EMAC, the Electric Mobility Association of Kenya. And they've worked with Kenyan government to actually put regulation in place to make sure that e-mobility is cheaper than ICE vehicles. And what do I mean by cheaper? Like the removal of excise duty, which was around $100 per bike that's being paid on ICE vehicles, has been removed for electric vehicles. So as a sector, we've come together. And I see some of the people in the audience, you know, we've got Chris and Stan there, and other people at COP representing us. And I think it's really been an industry collective that's come and has engaged with the government at the right space and the right time and said, e-mobility, Kenya needs to lead this. It's not just innovation, it's innovation and regulation coming together, and that's what's creating this impetus. And we're now all fighting each other to be the best in the business, but really the last 18 months have seen a lot of cohesion and collective conversations about how do we create the right regulatory framework for this to take off, and that's now in place. And Kenya really has one of the strongest regulatory environments for e-mobility, and I think that's central to take off. And then on top of that, you've seen innovation in the finance space, which has really helped to, I think, put us on the edge of that catalytic moment where we go from thousands of vehicles to tens of thousands of vehicles on the road.
Yeah, and just on the same, and maybe to you, Johannes, we've touched on innovation. What is the type of innovation that we're seeing around e-mobility in the finance space that's enabling this sector to just rise on?
No, the innovation from the finance space, I would like to even point out that Kenya is doing across all industries very big steps towards making electric vehicles accessible and easy to finance. I can give you a good example. Now, I'm originally from Estonia, and we have a very, very sizable electric fleet running the roads of Estonia. However, not a single insurance company in Estonia has made any electric-specific insurance package. And that's already present in Kenya. There's someone who has made this into a reality, and Kenya has, at the moment, something like 1,500 electric vehicles probably on the road, something at that range. Now, so it's really about bringing together all market shareholders to make it a reality. From a financing standpoint, EVs, due to their affordability, they're very low risk to financiers, meaning that financing is basically available to anyone. And also to fulfill these financial obligations that have been taken, now it's very easy. We can see it from the data. Electric motorcycle drivers don't have an issue making the payments. So that means everybody basically can afford an electric bike at this point.
Thank you. Jacob, to you, and we were discussing at the back aspects of the new trends in logistics. What is, from an e-mobility standpoint, what is the new opportunity that's coming out of e-mobility, and what's the innovation around that between just you and also your partners behind who are paying for the product?
So I'll first speak from the supply chain side of business. We are seeing a lot of transition from the non-traditional distribution into the e-commerce platform. And technology is playing a very big role in that aspect. What technology does is, how do you integrate all these riders into one platform to be able to do the last mile delivery? So for Little, for example, we've done the partnership with ARC on the EV side of business. So what that does is the riders are integrated into our platform, and they're able to now earn their income on daily basis or weekly basis. And when they're earning that income on weekly or daily basis, then they're able now to pay their financing back to Mogo. So the 3 partnership now works across. So there is provision of the bike, there is financing aspect of the bike, and there is supply chain side of the business. So when we plug in the technology, we're now able to have visibility on which riders are riding in the market, which ones are on financing, and which ones are servicing which account on our side of business.
Thank you. And just for everyone here who is just wondering, I have a e-bike and I want to sign up to your platform, and then I'm here with my diesel engine or petrol engine. Is there any preference from your side as a logistics partner, whether you pick me with a e-bike or me with a diesel engine? And I think the spin here is, of course, if there's preference, but second is if I'm riding a diesel engine or a petrol engine and he or she is riding an e-bike, who will earn more at the end of the month?
Of course, the EV. One, because of the fuel aspect. When I'm using the EVs, the rate for the EVs is much lower. If you look at the country right now, the fuel aspect has really gone so up. And my clients will ask me, can you give me better rates? So for me to be able to provide better rates, then I need to work with the EVs to be able to match the rates that they're asking for. It's about margin games. So of course, EV gives me the better margins.
Thank you for that. Coming back to you, Joe, I want to go into infrastructure, but before I get into infrastructure, as an e-bike owner, and I've been hearing discussions, if I own a diesel or a petrol engine and I'm running an e-bike, one of my greatest advantages is I do not have servicing costs. So speak to us to just some of the advantages that we may have as owners of e-bikes.
So I think if you look at the unit economics, kind of weigh it up. So I'm a boater guy. I've got fixed income coming in, maybe 1,200, 1,500 shillings a day. If I'm buying fuel at the moment, maybe I'm paying up to 800 shillings a day in fuel, 600 to 800 shillings a day in fuel. If you're buying an EV just on fuel alone, you're probably paying 400 a day. So straight away, nearly 40, 50% of that fuel cost goes back in your pocket on a daily basis. Also, what financiers like Mogo have done, if you want to buy an e-bike, the deposits are 50% less than what they are for a petrol bike. So maybe 20,000 versus 40,000. So again, that's money that's back in the pocket. And also the rates, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like 1% a month cheaper than so at every stage, you're putting money in your pocket by choosing to ride EV. It doesn't matter if you ride an Arc Ride or someone else's. The sector is at the point where EV is cheaper than petrol. That's why we're in this inflection point of mass adoption. Because if you want to ride a bike on Jacob's platform at Little, you're going to get paid the same. But that income that's going into your pocket is maybe 40, 50% more. And taking home those extra 300 to 500 shillings a day makes a huge impact on your daily lives. And that's really probably the most exciting bit about what we're all doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to you, Johannes, how are you making this more affordable for the general public to acquire e-bikes versus traditional type of engines?
No, so for the EV sector to be successful, EV bike financing needs to be as affordable as possible. Like Joseph mentioned, deposits are 50% less. So any one of you can get a new EV bike for 20K deposit and pay mdogo basically for the remaining balance. Also, we are keeping the interest rate as low as possible. So again, to encourage this adaptation of EV vehicles, because the more of them that are on the road, the better will be the infrastructure to support these bikes. And eventually, the cost will also be much, much lower, yeah? And one interesting thing I kind of want to emphasize in our active marketing for EV bikes, compared to petrol bikes, now, EV bikes, since they have like a daily limit on how much you can pay for energy. Now, you can't pay more than 450 shillings. It's impossible. You can drive 1,000 kilometers and still pay 450 shillings. It's the only vehicle that encourages you to work more, drive more, earn more through logistic partners such as Little.
Thank you. Coming back to infrastructure, Joe, and every time I speak to, people who are driving traditional type of engines, they'll always speak about, my biggest fear is when I'm in the middle of nowhere and my range dies out. So to you, what have you done about infrastructure? And where do you see there are more opportunities in the space for other people to plug into?
Yeah, so for us, the sector's at a tipping point, right? Do you put the bikes on the road? Do you put the infrastructure on the road to charge the bikes? And we went through trying to grow organically as a ratio of bikes to charging stations, and it really didn't work. So we've changed our approach. We're going infrastructure first. We're putting over 100 swapping stations in Nairobi. We currently have 76 swapping stations, so that's every 3 kilometers. So we need to have that confidence of the rider that they have access to the swapping infrastructure to adopt the bike. You know, we're covering all the way from Thika down past the airport and you know, Karen and across. So it's a big investment. So you need investors that are willing to see the long game as well. It's not just about the technology, it's about people that are willing to see this as an infrastructure play, invest in that infrastructure. But with that investment in the infrastructure, you can really reduce the costs of the operation for the rider perspective. So the bikes are cheaper, but actually by that infrastructure cost being spread across everyone as a shared infrastructure, actually the unit cost of daily running the fuel also comes down. And what we've also done is we've created an open source platform. So any company can come and use our battery and integrate that into their bike. And we'd be happy to have this shared battery ecosystem. And we call that battery as a service. So it's infrastructure enabled by battery as a service that we think is going to be a key part of this growth phase that you're going to see.
Thank you. Jacob, you spoke of your partnership with Arkride, and I want to delve into collaboration and partnerships. What led to that type of relationship? What are some of the wins you're seeing in there? Are you encouraging other players in the market to look at EV as an alternative partner for logistics?
So what we've seen in the market is a lot of clients that we are working with are moving towards, of course, the EV, and working towards the green conversion. That was the first factor that really drove us to move into EV. We've had clients like Carrefour, for example. We are doing closer to about 90 to 80% of delivery. They are pushing towards conversion by next year, June, to have 100% conversion into EVs. That drove us to see how do we convert over 2,500 riders that we have into EVs. So we are working towards conversion of the EVs, but then we are so passionate as well into reducing the carbon emission that is there in the market. Remember, we are in the public sector, both on the taxi side and on logistics side. So we are passionate about how do we reduce the carbon emission that is there in the market. So those are factors that are really driving us towards, we need to move towards this direction.
Thank you. And Johannes, you could speak to some of the collaborations you have. Do some exist? Do you see some opportunities in financing companies building collaborations and partnerships with some of the players in the e-mobility space?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And no, not only EV distributing companies, no, but also logistics partners. Yeah. So no, it is just a very affordable way of transport, and it will be for the upcoming future. No, and it's green. Yeah. And although this, no, as we spoke with Joseph, Arkride has 76 charging cabinets here. The biggest player in China has 600,000. Nah. Then, you know, no infrastructure questions there, yeah? Every second kilometer you can swap your battery. So no, basically anyone who wants to do a push for carbon neutral ways of transport, Mogo is open to financing, not only for companies, but for people who use it for personal use.
Thank you. Switching gears, let's talk about sustainability and impact, because in the end, the success of EVs will be based on what impact has it created. And we will piggyback to the very start of the conversation is, we're here because of climate change. I'd like to know, Joe, how do you track your impact in your organization? And who are the people interested in realizing that this is the change and this is the impact that your company is creating? And what does that mean in the market?
Yes, I think, to start with climate change, I think for every EV going on the road, you're looking at about 2 tons a year of CO2 emissions saved. And if you multiply that by 3-4 million motorbikes working in East Africa, that's a big climate impact. Back to your point of 40% of the emissions being by transportation, and a big chunk of that is by motorbikes, boda-bodas. And we're seeing that transition as a sector. Companies like Basico driving the revolution on buses are saving, tens of tons per vehicle they put on the road. So that carbon transition is happening. And that, I think it's really interesting to see how that adoption is happening much faster in cities like Nairobi and how that can expand regionally. So that's obviously one impact. I think the other impact, looking internally to us, is perhaps looking at 360 management of our battery system. Because we're putting these batteries in the system that are creating carbon savings. If we don't look after the battery in its afterlife, are we going to create a big pile of battery waste? So we have one success, but actually we create a future problem. So what we've done is we've designed our battery right from the very beginning to already have second life use. So we can take our battery, and when it gets down to 80%, we can repurpose it for solar home storage in 5 kVA or 10 kVA packs, which gives it another 6 to 8 years life. After that, because we're using LFP cells, it's much easier to repurpose them back into new cells, and we start the whole journey again. I think if you're using NMC, nickel, cobalt, magnesium cells, you have much more challenge. You have, first of all, cobalt, you have a conflict mineral, which you have to deal with. And then that second life becomes much more challenging. You can't repurpose it in a way. So we've chosen some, I'd say, ethical driven decisions about how we run our battery ecosystem and how we manage that 360 life cycle, and not just saying, hey, we're making CO2 emissions, which is hugely important. It's actually about taking responsibility for that future waste that we're creating ourselves.
Thank you. Johannes, I'd just like to understand, for Mogo, what does impact mean vis-a-vis climate change?
No, so look, we are aligned with the overall Kenyan targets in terms of carbon emissions. The more bikes we can swap, take ICE bikes, the classical internal combustion ones, off the market and put the EVs instead. Now, not only does it benefit the end user, but now also the overall society and the environment. And on another note, we are kind of also ready that the government at one point might do some pushes, as they've done previously, in terms of maybe limiting where ICE bikes can drive, and let's say make CBD only EV only zone. That might come in the near future.
Thank you. Jacob, what does impact mean to Little?
57% of the vehicles on the road is public transport. 10% of that is cab hailing and logistics. If I'm able to reduce that amount by, the government is looking at around 3.6 metric tons by 2025. So if I'm able to contribute into reduction of the carbon emission by 2025, by reducing the number of the vehicle that produce the carbon emission in the market, then I'll be contributing, of course, into the climate change that we are looking at. And our partnership, of course, with ARC is working towards reduction of the number of vehicles and the number of bikes that are there in the market that we need to convert.
Thank you. So how this will go is I'll give my last words, and I'll let the gents here to give their last words, all in 2 minutes marks. But for me, it's been lovely having all of you here, learning more about e-mobility. This is just us scratching the surface. So once you're out of here, feel free to reach to any of us who will then speak in turn about e-mobility and what we are doing. But again, I think if you didn't get anything, or if you just walked in right now, the takeaway is e-mobility is the future, and we're here to save the continent from climate change, right? So last words, gents.
Yeah, it's not in the future, it's happening now. I think that's the really exciting thing, and it's the collaboration between us. It's not just the e-mobility companies, the finance companies, the apps adopting EVs. It's this ecosystem that's coming together, all pulling in the same direction, which for me means this e-mobility revolution has started, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's a really exciting time, and it's just great to be in a room where so much innovation is happening. But e-mobility, just watch this space. A year from now, it's going to be electric.
Yeah, no, from my side, the numbers clearly show it. No, this thing is getting bigger by the day. It is getting bigger organically, and no, I don't think there's going to be any stop to it.
Thank you.
For me, I'll back up Joe's words together with. So it's happening now. It's more about collaborations. It's more about relationships, both on technology side, infrastructure side, product side, more about collaborations, collaborations.
Thank you. And again, give it up for the gents here. Thank you so much. It was lovely having you here.